Hi, I'm Joe Ricupero, and thank you for joining me for the debut episode of the Inexperienced Podcast. I'm glad to finally be bringing this to you guys. I've been working on this for quite some time, and I'm finally ready for you guys to hear it or to see it if you're watching on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter, at underscore inexperience underscore, or on YouTube at Inexperienced Podcast, or on TikTok at inexperienced.pod. I look forward to you guys hearing my story and the story of all of my guests in the coming weeks. Um, Thanks for joining, and I hope you really enjoy this. You can continue to follow and share, and please give all of your feedback. This is just one of infinity. I have plenty of more time to go, and there's plenty of more growth and experiences to come. Thanks for joining, guys. What is up, guys? I am here with David Mersky. He is the CEO of Sabanic.
Yeah.
A little flustered. It's a little nerve-wracking being here and sitting down with someone that's so put together and so like how you got here. I'm still at the beginning phases. You know what I mean of my journey, and it
We're
feels
all
like
at the
I watched you
beginning.
all day. I've watched you all day, and it's like,
Oh,
wow, it's impressive how far you've come.
wow. I mean, we're all on our own journey, so to speak, right? And then a lot of my main message, not to get it, we're like we're diving right in here, right off the jump. But my philosophy is we're not really going anywhere. It's all about an effort to get somewhere, but I think a lot of that is an illusion. But we can dive into
Yeah,
that.
I'm a little like it just feels good to be like at this juncture. You know what I mean? Like I'm so eager to get to the
Yeah,
next step of it, and it's
yeah,
exciting. It's exciting to know that there's a whole network of people out there,
yes,
and we're not
yeah.
alone. And we felt that we were for so long.
Right.
But
I agree.
anyway, I'm sorry. Let's get a little bit more into you. You're in Arizona now, but you are originally from Philly.
I grew up in Philly. Yeah, a Philly kid, Eagle Green, as Philly as they come, which is hard for a lot of people. I know.
It's like I'm a Steelers fan, predominantly. I grew up liking the Steelers and the Giants, but they were
Yeah,
both bad at the same time. So I was
right.
able to take an introspective look and be like, all right, it's fun when one of them is good at least, but I can't follow two bad football teams. They're still both not
It's.
very good, but watching the Eagles win hurts.
I understand. I understand it hurts, but listen, the Steelers have had so much success in the past, and it wasn't until the last few years that the Eagles finally got over the top. I remember watching in 2017 with my dad, who's, approaching 80 now, and thinking that, we might never see a Super Bowl in my life. And that's a Philly thing, right? Like you're accustomed to so much loss, which is also a life thing. You get into like this rut of things and you think they'll never change. And then, so I was shocked as much as anything else, finally when they got there. And then obviously this second one it was certainly interesting because you've kind of been there before, which highlights a really interesting point, by the way, by way of a little segue, which is a lot of those players. I remember, like AJ Brown was saying, and Jalen Hurts was saying that when you finally win, right, and that was both of their first win. The win is not as satisfying as the loss is hurtful, which is a really interesting observation in life, because we all think we're getting somewhere, going somewhere, and finally, you've climbed the mountaintop and you think that you've kind of attained the success and realize that it's actually not as satisfying. All right. Oh, good. You're there. You're back with us. I don't have audio.
I do now. Sorry.
Okay. There
Still a
we go.
little new
No
to the
problem.
interface. I'm sorry. She's
No,
a
it's all
she's a
good.
puppy, and I muted her. And
I'm very well acquainted with the puppies. But just the quick point I was making was that you strive so hard and work so hard and sacrifice, And then you finally get to the place and get the things that you thought all your effort had been going toward, and then realize that you don't have this fulfillment or satisfaction that you thought you were going to get. When you lose, it's very easy, and the first thought is, well, I would be happy if I had won, and now you feel that disappointment, which sets right in so naturally. Ironically, the success doesn't set in that well, and you realize that there's more out there, and you don't see that satisfaction. And one of my main messages is, as when you put so much emphasis on these external things, these goals, and then you get there and you don't find the satisfaction, then it becomes very challenging. And so the message, and in my personal journeys and the lessons I've learned through psychedelics, is that you will never be satisfied as long as you are relying on something external, that it's always within. And that's like the message out of Buddhism and some of these great masters, is that, as soon as you look to something without, you've already lost. It's an interesting point. It's an interesting road to go down that we started in with
And that was
football,
in,
but it's
it,
apropos.
it's and it's because all of these players have this philosophy, and they all have this they're keyed in with religion and their bodies, and so many other things that are so positive, and that's why they're where they are, and they have the success that they have. And for me, especially like this year, I dove into Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Great.
And as an Italian, it was something like, all right, a little bit about my people, like way at the beginning. And oh my God, especially trying to overcome this injury that I suffered at work, unfortunately.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and there's just a whole system that's very slow, and
Workers'
they don't.
comp.
Yes. I don't know how much I can talk about like that workers' comp legal stuff. I can talk about the garden, and I got hurt at Madison Square Garden.
Hmm. Oh.
Um, so that's another obstacle, I'm
Do you have,
certain.
did you, without knowing anything about your case, now you've got my wheel spinning as a former
Mhm.
personal injury lawyer, though, from New York. Do you have a case though, or is it just a purely
They,
work-related injury?
mhm. I'm absolutely happy to get into it a little bit more privately, only because
Okay,
I don't know.
of
They
course.
only told me I could say so much, and I can't insinuate things. What I can tell you is
Sure.
the person that assaulted me was in handcuffs, and
Oh
nothing came of
God.
it.
Okay. 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 All right. Gotcha.
And nothing came of it. I don't have his name or anything, and now it's 2 years.
Wow. Wow.
So I'm going on this journey. I'm a talker. I'm very good
Yeah.
at it. I enjoy it. I enjoy conversation. I've been very isolated. It's very
Yeah.
hard. I'm on
Yeah.
my own personal quarantine. I didn't think that was going to happen.
Right.
And it's been very introspective, especially the last few months that now I got off all pharmaceutical medication. I got very sick the last year. So I was injured for a year, and it was micro poisoning probably from like these crazy pills I was always taking.
Right.
So that's kind of where my journey starts with cannabis. And I'm interested to learn more, I guess, because of my injuries, and my brain fogs a little.
Yeah.
I lose track, but then I can bring it back around, or try to.
Cannabis. I'm very good friends with cannabis. We are intimately acquainted.
We are in a love-hate relationship. I
Yeah.
don't want to rely on anything. I want to be able to say this is a tool to use. And hey, I had a workout. I'm in a little bit of pain. Fine, I'll go do that because they gave me oxy, and they'll write that script every time you ask.
Yeah.
Not at 25. I didn't take a single one of them. I dealt with the
Right.
pain until I couldn't. I
Right.
wasn't crazy about cannabis either. I had a whole plan to be in the NYPD by now.
Right.
That was not happening now.
Yeah.
And so be it. So I decided to jump into the cannabis, and there's a lot of guilt when you do something that they tell you is evil for so long.
Yeah. And that just goes to a bigger picture about outside judgment and other people bearing upon that. And when you're in the space that I'm in the psychedelic space, and having taken plant medicine journeys and ayahuasca and all of these things, I mean, you'll run into that. I mean, like, it's unlimited, all kinds of judgment. And I've overcome that, right? And a lot of it has to do with, you just don't talk to people that you know are not going to be predisposed to what you're talking about. uh, and being confident enough in your own path to be able to ignore that, right? Because nobody knows what's good for you, and the truth is, nobody really, outside of a few people, really cares what's good for you. And then
Mhm.
there are people that don't want to see any good come to you because they're dealing with their own crap. And so you've got all of that together. And so it just comes down to you've got to just do what's best for you. But certainly to your point, like anything can be abused, and that's fair. That's fair game.
And
Yeah.
like I'm looking at a calendar that's in front of me that's it's from January because just the numbers on it mean a lot to me because they were like a low point for me. Like
Yeah.
I smoked about 84 times that month.
Right.
Crazy to think about. That's how much pain I was in.
Yeah.
And I'm still working towards getting off of it. And it's only been in the last week or so that I'm like seriously weaning off of it.
Yeah.
I just want to get my life back on track and I want to be able to again use it as a tool instead of like to keep me alive. And there
Yeah.
was a
I'll
lot of
tell you
guilt in that.
for sure. I mean, I get that. I think you have to work through that. Um, I think for the most part, guilt is a wasted emotion because if you're feeling badly about something you're doing and it causes you to look at something where you might want to make a change, absolutely, right? We're always about evolution and change, but like guilt is something that comes from the past, and the past is something that just does not exist. There is no past, there is no future. This is the illusion of time that we exist in. I talk about this. And so
Mhm.
it's all about the present moment. However, as humans, we exist in this 3D environment, and there is time, and we do have to deal with that. And so you if you make an appointment at next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, there is that element of time is very much concrete in our existence, so it can't be ignored. And of course we wouldn't be able to navigate daily life without it. But I think we have to exist in this kind of duality where we realize that it is an illusion and we use it as a tool to navigate day to day. But like these things that keep us in the past, and worry is something about the future, is absolutely wasteful of energy. Um, but it's a very complicated, topic to
Mhm.
tackle. But
And it's
yeah,
I feel bad for the people along the way that I didn't want to speak to.
yeah,
Like who I felt I wasn't myself and it was the pharmaceutical stuff that really messed with my head and I didn't take any oxy, refused to do it, but I was on muscle relaxers and then my stomach started turning, so they put me on an antidepressant that would just help me sleep. I wasn't really Am I depressed? Yes, but do I need an anti-anxiety medication? No, I wouldn't take it for that.
right.
I did it because I needed sleep and my stomach was like really turning and it turned off like a couple of my nerves. I took mirtazapine, which was not fun.
I don't even know what it is.
I
Yeah.
got super bloated. I gained a lot of weight and I wasn't myself and I didn't like being out. I didn't like being around people and like I
Yeah.
decided to this year after reading meditations, I jumped onto 75 hard and I failed in like 18 days. However, that was like 57 days ago and I'm still down 40 pounds and I've still changed everything and I cut out processed foods and it's crazy to food is medicine.
Yes, it is.
Food is medicine and they don't it's because what they're putting in the food is poison.
It's poison.
Like and it's like, no one really understands that doctors don't have your best interest most of the time. There's a young
And they don't,
generation of doctors coming
yeah,
out that do. They're not the Rolex doctors.
yeah.
Have it as you may.
And
I
they
don't know. Did they watch their grandparents go through it? Maybe.
and they're clinicians in the sense that they're taught in a system, in a finite structure, about how to analyze and diagnose and then prescribe. And so in that regard, it's not their fault, but the Western medicine is very limited, and they have limited tools at their disposal, and there's only so much they can do. So it's not that their intent is bad. I have a lot of family that are physicians, but they're just limited and they don't know what they don't know. And understandably, they're not going to go out on a limb to recommend things that are not studied and recommended by the American Medical Association. Okay, and that's understood too, because and then there's liability involved. So they're limited in what they can do, which is why this burgeoning era and renaissance of psychedelics can be so helpful in so many ways. We're talking about physical pain, we're talking about obviously emotional, and then the tie between physical pain, chronic pain, now we're talking about, like what you're talking about, and depression and the link there. And so like there are studies going on now that are cutting edge, that are dealing with the link between depression and pain, and then what psychedelics can possibly do to alleviate that and address it, at least to some extent, sometimes miraculously. So, I mean, in studies now that the NIH is recognizing, that are actually, I mean, helping people beyond description. And then you get into like depression with law enforcement and PTSD and military people, which is why like states like Arizona, where I'm located, a traditionally very conservative state, is passing legislation and considering new legislation to get behind psilocybin and MDMA to deal with these issues, and
Which
that these things have been suppressed for 50 years is beyond criminal.
it was just a way to stop the hippies, and it's incredible how we got to a point in the last 8 years that I don't know how we got here, that the conservatives are the hippies, that the Republicans want to try ivermectin, and maybe it's the voices that we're hearing, maybe it's RFK and his posse, but all of the podcasters that helped get this guy reelected, they're all into this stuff. The vice president is into this stuff. And he's even shown, the vice president, J.D. Vance, is very into using psychedelics for veterans. And it is something that we should be using for veterans. No brainer, duh.
Of course.
And you know what? If
Of
anyone wants
course.
to experiment with their body and decides that they want to test something that'll help them sleep at night, you do it for the people that you sent to a war they didn't need to go to.
Yeah, it's
I-
interesting. With regard to what's going on with military, and I'm involved with a group of Navy SEALs that are behind psilocybin, because and we now have the benefit of some clinical three trials, advanced studies that are showing absolute promise. Not only that, but like no side effects, no toxicity. It's amazing how these natural plant-based medicines are work so seamlessly with the human body, and that we've detached ourselves from them just based on what has evolved culturally over so many years. And I think there's a lot more, behind that, which really has a lot more to do with the fact that these medicines are unifying people, where they're able to give you a perspective that you are your neighbor, you are your brother's keeper, and a lot of that goes back to traditional religion too. And it's ubiquitous through all religion. If you would just do unto others as you'd have done to you, the psychedelics, these medicines give you that understanding innately, and I think it's that unification that really the government was opposed to, because when you have an electorate that is looking out for each other and not fighting, then because it's the fighting that keeps the government able to run, while they keep the proletariat, so to speak, just confined to these arguments, and let them fight about money issues, let them fight about Wall Street and Main Street, let them fight about abortion and guns and all of these topics that keep people divided, because they're playing another game, and they're playing the long game. And I think, the psychedelics kind of remove the veil of that and bring people, together. So they work so well on so many different levels that we're now like
and
just kind of addressing here.
for me, when I was in high school, hey, kids in high school, they smoke a little bit of dope. Oh, kill me. I didn't like it. Wasn't good. I had anxiety. I didn't feel good. I did not like it. Did not smoke it. Was not a fan of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Out of high school, I don't think I ever smoked after high school. Then
Right.
Delta 8 became popular, and I started working about a year before I got hurt. My hours started
Hmm.
really ticking up. I was doing like 50 to 70 hours a week, almost every week. I
Right.
loved it. I loved it. I had one of the coolest jobs. I met so many interesting people, and that's what got me through things. But you need sleep and you need to recover. So I got into Delta 8. It did enough for me. I took edibles, and once or twice a week it would help me to sleep.
Yeah.
But they don't want to, they rather put people on, like, Ambien.
Yeah.
When, like,
Yeah.
or like, I don't know, creatine has so many effects that can help you and your brain. Yet when I was in high school, they told me that you don't want to get hooked on creatine. Don't get your body hooked, because once you hit that point where you're functioning, where you don't need to keep paying them,
Yeah.
that's what they fear.
Let's not, yeah, we'll never be able to underestimate the power of big pharma in this. They've obviously, we know what's going on with opioids now, and how these plant medicines can provide unbelievable alternatives to that. And but there's that big money component, and you can't uh, get patents on these natural medicines. You can't patent a mushroom, right?
But
So, there's and they tried to attack Delta 8 that way because Delta 8 is derived synthetically.
Mhm.
So then they tried that angle, and so I've been through that. I've been in that business. I was manufacturing Delta 8 for smaller brands, doing contract manufacturing, white label work, and obviously it wasn't until the price of cannabis dropped so precipitously, because like Delta 8 was on the market since the 60s. I mean, they were studying it as an antiemetic on kids, young kids as young as 8 years old with cancer, and it worked so well for nausea. So it's not like it wasn't known for a long time, but there was no way to economically produce Delta 8. And so you didn't actually see it come onto the market until what? Until the price of CBD cratered. So when I got into like CBD in 2019, I was buying, and we were making CBD gummies and all these things. I was buying CBD as a raw material at like 7,000, 7,500 bucks a kilo, and that was nowhere near the high point of the pricing. So there was, you couldn't get to Delta 8, but when CBD cratered to like, 200, few $100 a kilo from 7,500, all in a few year span, then the scientists figured out we can actually take CBD and and make changes to that chemically to and alter it to get to Delta 8. So they weren't like you cannot extract Delta 8 from marijuana plant, from cannabis, because it exists at such a small level. But you can start with CBD, which when it became so cheap, they could then convert that into Delta 8. And that's when you saw Delta 8 proliferate. So but for the economics, you never would have seen Delta 8.
and it's crazy that they just, like, looked the other way. New York City had these crazy stores opening that were just, and trying to pass it off as cannabis. And hey, it was helpful for people, and they didn't even realize it. But it was just amazing to see the reform on cannabis, since all of this is occurring, is inspiring, I guess, because we know it can do a lot, and it
Yeah,
can help people. It truly can.
yeah,
The way I used it, not it. Not it. It's not, you don't want to do it 7 times a day. Nothing you want to do that much.
right,
You don't. I was in pain.
right.
I was in pain, and it was something that I dealt with, but I'm here.
Well, there you get the interplay then between availability and regulation, because now I'll jump in and say you do need some level of regulation, because like cannabis is now ubiquitous across the country, but when you go to New York, I mean, New York has screwed it up worse than any city in America. I'm safe to say,
Hmm.
I think, where you have like the licensed dispensaries are, they're not in the market because you can go into any bodega and go buy it.
Hmm.
And now, what's the result of that? You're seeing fentanyl creep into cannabis.
And
Now that's a disaster.
that's only because they, like, are not really going after people that are selling it in their stores. It's crazy
So
that you don't know
crazy.
what a real dispensary is and what isn't. Like, there was a dispensary up the block from Madison Square Garden that I'm certain was not real. I'm certain they had a membership fee, and they're gone already.
Yeah.
They're gone. It's been 2 years. They're already
Yeah.
gone. You're not selling weed in the city? Stop.
Yeah. So, it's just unbelievable. New York is just, and I just got back from New York last week because I lived like yeah, I'm a Philly kid, but I went to NYU, and then I met my wife, and I was in New York for 16 years.
Awesome.
So,
What
yeah,
part? What part? Whereabouts?
so in NYU, I was down in the Village,
Hmm.
and then right by NYU, like on West Fourth Street. And then I got married and I moved to the Upper East Side. So I've been all over the city, not all over, but I'm more of an East Side person. Never been to the West Side, but lived on the East Side on the river. And that's when I was in law school. And I went to Brooklyn Law School, so I was commuting from Upper East down to Brooklyn every day.
Okay.
And
My parents
then,
went to Brooklyn.
oh really? Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a Brooklyn boy. I grew up in Bensonhurst.
yeah. Yeah. Brooklyn, I mean, like downtown Brooklyn, as you know, is like maybe more expensive is like, the city, right? Because I
It,
mean, you get more, or I don't even know now if that's even accurate, but it's such a nice place to live. Like downtown Brooklyn
but it was
is
never like
is
that.
so nice, you
It's
know?
crazy because people don't know what Williamsburg was like.
People have no
Williamsburg used
idea
to be.
how big it is actually. I mean, it's
Hmm.
enormous. My wife was a an assistant DA in Brooklyn under like Chuck Hines, back in the day.
Okay.
I'm going back to like the late '90s, like the early O's. But she was in sex crimes in Brooklyn, and you could just not even imagine. I mean, there's 100,000 cases, criminal cases going on in Brooklyn every year. I mean, it's enormous.
Hmm.
Brooklyn's a phenomenal borough. I mean, it's a city unto its own, right? I mean, it's amazing, an amazing place. And I mean, for a lawyer, great place. Brooklyn Law School, great law school. A street fighter's law school. I mean, you learn law, you learn how to practice law. There are clinical opportunities. I mean, just unbelievable. I don't think it ever gets, the credit that it deserves, but great place.
Yeah, and I know plenty of people that have gone on to now have graduated from Brooklyn Law. Actually, around my age, and it's
Yeah.
still one of the schools that you're right in New York does not get enough credit.
No, no. I mean, if you look at the judiciary, if you look at practitioners, you got, I mean, some of the best lawyers that come out of Brooklyn Law. But, being in Brooklyn, it just didn't, it never kind of, and the school is an old school, but it just never, because I guess because it was based in Brooklyn, it just nationally didn't kind of get the
Hmm.
reputation that it certainly deserves, like in these rankings, which I think are bullshit. But if you want to, learn how to practice law, Brooklyn Law School is a great school. And by the way, even when I was there, I can't imagine, like I graduated in '97, but I went to kids like I went to NYU, which then was very expensive school, a very shishi kind of school. But when I got to law school and Brooklyn, like even then was like a right at like the second tier, like it wasn't NYU and Columbia and the other like renowned national schools. But I went to school that my class was full of kids that went to like SUNY Binghamton, and then you got kids that got a lot of like scholarship money that probably got into NYU or like top tier law schools, but got a full ride to Brooklyn. So if you were in Brooklyn Law, you were in a school with smart kids, and the kids like from SUNY Binghamton were just as smart as everybody else. So that whole fallacy about like where you went to school, total bullshit. These kids are smart and they're great practitioners. And if you went up against any of them like today, you'd have your hands full. That's just an observation, a practical observation, just about just law in general. It's all garbage. Where you went. These are all these labels and things that I got caught up in too. And you were fighting to get into like, let me get into the best school, but all overblown, right? So that's another story.
Well, all right. So going backwards a little bit, you were talking about getting plants legalized. It's not too easy, and that they make it hard. But there are religions that require you to embrace some plants, like ayahuasca, and they've they tried to like legalize stuff like that, but it depends on which version of the politician you get, because we're talking about
Yeah.
the religious reformation Religious Freedom
Reli-
Restoration Act. I'm sorry, when Chuck
yes,
Schumer sponsored this
yes,
thing. So Chuck Schumer, and I have a video. If Kevin, if you can pull it up, of Chuck Schumer, like talking about things that mind blowing, knowing who this man is, talking about how religious freedoms and how important it is for people to express their religions, and
yeah,
that's not the man in many, many, many aspects.
yeah,
That is not the man that existed, you know,
yeah,
it exist in 2020. He doesn't exist standing up for his own people.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I mean, I'm a Jew, right? I see his position on Israel is not anywhere close to mine. And obviously it's a very complicated issue, and I don't know that we're not intending to go there on that, but I take the point. But just to
Mhm.
confine it to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, that's a complicated case too. It's a Supreme Court case. And now we have the benefit, and maybe ironically, of having an administration now with RFK in particular, whose family has been impacted by a lot of health issues, where he's behind psychedelics because of the impact it's had on himself, his family members, and you have the conservatives in charge who are obviously behind religious freedoms. And it seems contrary on the surface level that they might be, that they wouldn't support sacred plant medicines in religious observation, but then they are, and that's unexpected. And I'm intending to use that to pursue a DEA exemption to
Mhm.
serve ayahuasca, which I think may be the fastest way to get that exemption. That exemption has been granted, and there are a couple lawsuits in Arizona right now that are pending, that are seeking relief to serve ayahuasca. So the RFRA is not necessarily a green light. If you open up a place to serve ayahuasca, and don't think that you might not get a knock on the door
Mhm.
simply because the RFRA has been passed by the Supreme Court. First of all, the feds are not uniformly behind that in terms of what they'll allow. So there's enforcement and lack of enforcement. There's no clear road there. And then the state that you're in is on a totally different path, right? So, like, I'm here in Arizona, like, I wouldn't just open my doors and say I'm serving ayahuasca. Although ayahuasca is served in Arizona, like other states, and very safely, without any, very safely. Ayahuasca doesn't really involve a lot of the kind of harms that you think would, like, you don't have fentanyl in ayahuasca, and there's certainly nothing, it's completely safe. There are no really adverse accounts or stories or any health problems or anything that will come out of it, but it's a total gray area. Let me just say that.
This is the Religious Freedoms Restoration Act that went against COVID. We're having a little technical difficulty. It wasn't supposed to be pulled up at this moment. However,
All right.
it is. But they use this. They use Kevin. You can stop screen sharing. I appreciate you. Um, but I'm sorry that little distracted me.
Good.
It's crazy. This is how my brain works now, and it didn't work this way. I used to be
I hear
able
you.
to like, and I can have a good conversation. I can still have a conversation, and I'll get back there eventually. And I'm so much better. And it's just, I would like to see more of this happen, but it's not going to happen here in New York, which is crazy because it's as liberal as can be. Our laws are not very liberal here. Like
Yeah, in the
we
traditional
have
sense, no.
liberals, that are pushing conservative laws. They're not there for the worker anymore. The Republicans are.
No. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the conservatives are really conservative in the traditional sense, and the
Mm-mm.
liberals are looking to control so many things that are
It's
anti-liberal. And
it's because
so,
conservatives
yeah,
realized somewhere after Mitt Romney lost that conservatism was dead. And they
yeah,
didn't fully grasp it in 2016 and they played hardball.
yeah,
And then they realized when they lost in 2020 that they had to, because my generation is not conservative if we're Republican, we're populists.
Yeah.
That's the way of the Republican Party, and they were able to adapt. And the liberalism is like
Yeah.
very far left. You can't go so
Yeah.
far that you push people to the other side. What are we
No, I
doing?
mean, like I'm all about freedoms, right? I'm all about that. That's the core of traditional, liberalism and progressives. But like today, I'd be seen as really a conservative almost, but not the conservatives that are defined by what I think's happening now. Which, while I'm in support of a lot of things, and we're getting onto the, this topic, but as a lawyer too, I'm really concerned with what we're seeing in terms of what's being challenged, by the Supreme Court, and we're seeing like the administration coming head to head with the court now, and really challenging the fundamentals of what the Constitution is built on. And for better or worse, Donald Trump is challenging the status quo just about everywhere he can, and it's pushing the constraints of our system. And maybe in a good way, it's at least testing who we are and what we're willing to endure.
And I think what people are missing, and they don't, he's a showman. At the end of the day, the man is a showman, and they have to realize that. And you have to take some of the things that he says for face value, but he does give you the bits, and if you pay attention, he does tell the whole story eventually, but he wants you to watch every clip. And his reasoning pretty much is that, yeah, it's illegal, but we should start asking questions. Why is it illegal? Why can't we do this? Why don't we have these freedoms to start opening some of these federal lands to get some relief for the people that I can't buy a house? My generation is having a very hard time moving out.
Your generation will never buy a house.
No,
That's where
and
this is going. And I don't know if it's going to change, because I mean, it would take almost like a generation to kind of change this, because I don't see how you can get in the game at this point,
it's very hard.
right?
And you try to play the markets, and I kind of know what I'm doing, but how much do I know what I'm doing, and who's playing with my money right now?
Yeah. And what we're seeing with interest rates. I mean, I think what was unanticipated with these tariffs obviously was it cratered the bond market, and obviously that drew a very prompt response from the administration, because it was absolutely a line that they could not cross, and we're still kind of reeling from that a little bit. The market's down again today. I don't know
Hmm.
that there's any way out. These blanket tariffs are a disaster. A lot of things. We need a lot of change, and where we were going was, I mean, the debt load that we're carrying it's just untenable, right? And the Democrats were not going to do anything to change that. And that's how I think you get like a Donald Trump. While where I think some of the things like on immigration policy are actually very good, the execution of it's all over the place. They're criticizing Joe Biden, about who's
Yeah,
really in office. He's unelected, but now you've got Elon Musk, who's similarly unelected, and who's handling our foreign policy? Not Marco Rubio, but you've got Steve Witkoff, running around on private
but
planes having conversations. And so, like, they just do the same thing. It's just another flavor,
but
and I don't know where we're going with that.
Elon Musk was a darling to them 10 years ago
You
because he
know?
was the EV guy. And if you notice in the last like 10 days, Elon Musk hasn't really been an important topic because he's against the tariffs. And so you can't have that because you can't acknowledge that there are different opinions in the room, and that's okay. Different
Yeah,
opinions are okay, and I don't know when we lost that as a whole global community by tapping into social media and getting onto the internet. At some point we got too community based and too click based. So now
yeah.
all of your friends have all of the same three interests, and you talk in an echo chamber of people that only like the things you like, and no one exists in a world like that. It's not real.
No. No, I mean, the parties are at such extremes. I mean, really, what we should have is we should probably be agreeing like wholeheartedly on 90% of things, and then be a little bit left or a little bit right on some others. But This is not, but that is who we are as a people. The parties, though, and the way the politics is funded now are just at the extreme. So this is where we are, and the fact that we have elections every 4 years means that we can't really gain traction to gain a foothold to implement
Mhm.
sensible policy over time. And if you look at other countries that aren't subjected to that, they have a lot more kind of stability. But of course, a lot of these countries, I'm not talking about Europe, but if you look at, like, who Donald Trump really looks to for
Like
as a
Argentina.
big fan, you look at Korea and you look at Russia and you look at China, like those guys are going to be in power forever. And
Hmm.
and we don't want that. But what we want are politicians that, okay, you've 8 years, you've had your turn, let the next guy or woman come in, but the policy shouldn't really shift dramatically every 4 years, because we can't really have any stability like this.
But there's like, so like with Argentina, right? Donald Trump looks a lot to Argentina's economy, and Elon Musk is very into their economy. And look what President Melli down there is doing. It's like incredible stuff that they have a surplus of money in Argentina, a country that we still sanction, who we're friends with, and we're sanctioning them. And people don't talk about that, right? No, it's only
Yeah,
when you tariff a country that they think they like. But you
yeah,
don't. You don't. These people do not have the same ideals as you. They do not love you. They do not love us. They love our money because we will spend it. We will spend it. And to look at these numbers of tariffs, and like, when did a world that's existed for millions of years with countries like Russia and China and the UK that have existed for thousands of years, when did they start relying on a little country big country that is on the other side of the world that's only existed for 250 years? When did that
yeah.
happen? When did that happen? When did we become Big Brother? When did we start having to pay these things out? Like, you know what? If we're paying $30 million for Sesame Street in Afghanistan, kind of want to see it now.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see it. If we paid for it, let's see it, because that money didn't go there. That money then came back around, and it's funneling these 4-year long campaigns. I don't know what we're doing. It's
Yeah.
division. And the governor of Minnesota should not be speaking in another state. Period. End of discussion until it's time to campaign. There's a time for it. What are you
Yeah.
running for? What are you running for? You're running on division. If I got on this podcast and one day in 30 years, when I have hopefully millions and millions of people listening,
Yeah.
and I told you that it's good that Tesla stock is tanking, when would I would start getting investigated? When you, in your own state and your own people, you're investing in their pensions with this money, and it's like, they do not have your interest. They do not have your best interest. It's crazy that the social experiment is kind of working. That we have to go crazy a little bit to really weed these people out. These are cancers to our society that want to see it die. They they idolize, Europe, but why do we have Red 40 when Canada doesn't? Like our neighbors to the north, who are completely like, they're stealing money from us. They charge our dairy 300% in tariffs almost. And they don't talk about that part.
Yeah.
So we can't get even, but we have to keep supplying these countries. And it doesn't work that way. You have to scare the world a little bit. And the only way for my generation to buy a home is for the economy to tank for a little bit. It's got to correct itself, unfortunately. We need an opportunity.
The other part about that is culturally, people like in their 20s now don't really want to buy a home. They're like the American dream of home ownership is not the same as it was. And I think a lot of that dream was put in place by banks so they could issue mortgages and loans. And they kind of crafted that story. But obviously, home ownership is, I think it's the base of what the American dream, was. I don't know that it necessarily has to be that way, but certainly, I mean, you're talking about a generation of renters now, and you're at the behest of the landlords. And I do think like the Black Rocks, who are owning like just massive percentages of local markets, who can then control pricing in markets, is not right.
And
is
like,
not
I
right.
don't know. I thought BlackRock was going to be part of this whole uprising, and maybe it still is. And maybe we will get to them eventually. But letting them buy part of the Panama Canal was not what I envisioned when you have a kid in their commercial shooting at the president, who
Yeah.
we know nothing about. This kid had foreign accounts allegedly. His
Hmm.
parents are like, don't leave the house. They're like, what? What
Yeah.
happened? When did we like? It was a whole week that we cared that the president, like a former president, was shot in the head, and they still don't believe it, and it's still not believed that it happened.
It's
It's
crazy time.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's
Find a
crazy time.
20-year-old who believes in things. He believed in something so much that he got on top of a roof to take a shot at one of the most popular or the most known person in the world, next to the
Yeah.
Pope, probably.
Yeah.
Mind blowing. Mind
Yeah.
blowing. And then you had another guy try to take shots at him who was fighting on his own fight in Ukraine.
That it's an interesting issue because not to get too deep in the woods, and I'm not very well versed on the details of the assassination attempt, but it was a I'm a gun person, right? I became
Mhm.
like when I moved to Arizona almost 20 years ago. When I was a kid, I never had access to firearms, but I had an innate interest in firearms that I could never explain. When I came to Arizona, which is a really a gun-free state, I'm like almost the most 2A favorable state in the country, right there among the few. Like I can go up the street to a Circle K and go buy a gun from a guy, totally legally. Which totally
Wow.
legally. I can go to 7-Eleven, I can go to the supermarket, I can meet you in a parking lot, which I have done 200 times, right?
Mhm.
And I could buy a gun, I could trade a gun. Now, having said that, and it sounds crazy, I understand that. I have met unbelievable people. I just did a deal a few weeks ago with a former NYPD cop. So I've done deals with cops, I've done deals with doctors, lawyers, all kinds of people. I like some higher end stuff. So price point wise, like I like some nicer things, but and I understand like people that are not in like gun states that sounds insane. And on one level, I do understand that. Um, on another level, though, like I can't overstate that the freedoms to be able to defend yourself, and also just for entertainment value and the fun and joy that firearms can bring. I know that when we talk about these things, it's always in a negative light, but there's so much like family fun and things that can be done with kids responsibly and safely that can add such an element to that, on top of the fact that you can protect yourself, and being able to protect yourself fundamentally as the first line of your own defense, is there's nothing more American about that.
No, and it's it goes back to like the Hatfields and the McCoys. That's like
Mhm.
when you learn about America, you learn about how we defended ourselves with our guns. Like
Yeah,
we created our own military, our own army for an uprising that led us to where we are today, and we cannot lose that.
yeah,
We can't lose it. There's
Uh,
good guns and there's bad guns. There's
yeah.
good, but when you get rid of the guns, the next thing will come along. And people still have guns. We have people here that shouldn't be here. You think we can't get guns here? We got drugs here that shouldn't be here. We don't make fentanyl in the United States. It's coming here somehow.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And which is why, I mean, I understand that the people would think that allowing guns in New York City. And by the way, so here's an interesting thing going on, which the Supreme Court has said you now have, right or wrong, right? And I acknowledge some interesting analysis legally on the Supreme Court's decision, but the law is the law. If we're going to be American, you can challenge the law, but you have to at least abide by what the current state of the law is.
Hmm.
And the Supreme Court has said there is an individual right. Forget about the militia and everything else. We're beyond that, at least currently. There is an individual right to at least have a gun in the home. The court now has intimated that if you have a personal right now beyond the militia to defend yourself in the home, where are you most challenged is, well, not in the home but outside. So why would you not have that right extended outside the home? The court has intimated that. We haven't had that case come up yet, but we have had the decision in Heller, its progeny, these other cases where you where concealed carry is now a fundamental right. But you're seeing New York and other states push back against that. But I'll tell you, and so that they're just directly challenging the law and trying to implement restrictions that are delaying the implementation of concealed carry. In New York and other states are doing the same thing. So we're going to see that play out. But it's in absolute defiance of what Supreme Court law is right now. So when liberals want to challenge Donald Trump and the administration on following longstanding precedent, they don't need to look anywhere further than themselves in terms of firearms law, in terms of what they're doing. So you can look at both sides of the fence, where there's, you don't want to acknowledge law that you don't like, and that's what's going on, no matter what your position is.
Of course. And it's like, okay, so fine, no guns, and they want to start making this big deal with the law, and it eventually is going to come to the Supreme Court, because today, again, unfortunately, in another another gun-happy state, we have people dying on a college campus, and we cannot have that either. There has to be some sort of middle ground where people can agree that psych evals a little bit.
Well, isn't the middle ground that no matter what your position is on guns, that nothing is protecting the schools? Like, we can certainly agree and find the money on, regardless of it, we're on fire. How in the world can we allow schools to exist unprotected today? Forget about what your position is. If you're on fire, if you banned firearms today, that does not make the school any safer tomorrow. It doesn't. You have to prevent, you've got to stop this.
Every school has unarmed security. Every school has unarmed security, and people just walking around with like a badge, and they say, hey, stop running. But we have so many, like, NYPD is literally like, it's 30,000 people. It's a military force. So there's a lot of retired cops who would love to sit in a car on school grounds and carry their weapon. And they move everywhere. They don't stay in New York, because why would you? Some do, most don't. So that's just one very well-trained police force. One that we don't have, for its size, nearly as many problems as the rest of the country does, especially with police work. So they're doing something right with the NYPD.
Yeah, and we talk about our kids. We got to protect the kids, and both sides. Yeah, we got to protect our kids, right? But we don't, and like, we can't find the money for that. And I mean, like, people like me, I would go through some training program that was prescribed by some bill that should be passed on a bipartisan basis, to say I would volunteer some hours a week. And I know a lot of people would. I know a lot of guys who would say, yeah, I would go to my local high school or my local elementary school or whatever, and I would give my time, and I would provide the defense as part of a team for that school for no money, on a voluntary basis, like on a weekly basis. And you've got to stop that from coming in. I mean, otherwise it makes no sense. I mean, it's akin to saying guns are illegal. So since we have laws that are strong and against carrying a gun on a plane, then we shouldn't have metal detectors, because we have the laws.
Which, if you want to go to a baseball game, if you want to go see the Yankees play, you've got to go through a metal detector, and they have these new metal detectors that, especially being a security guard for so long, that you don't even like take your things out of your pocket. Crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you just walk right through it, and it's not, you don't feel safe at all. No way.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, it's so easy to get like alcohol in now if you wanted to.
Yeah.
There's no metal on that. So it's just one thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. I used to really certain shows that come that people bring whatever they'd like, whatever's going to get them through it, and to enjoy the tunes, to say the least. And we get some interesting bands, and those crowds bring some really dangerous things that are like not metal.
Yeah.
And you have to keep people safe. And they have guns that are not metal now. So duh.
We could go down this rabbit hole on, but the point that I like to highlight, because some people would say to me that it seems a little incongruous that I'm this firearm supporter. I carry a gun every day. I'm maybe no bigger supporter of Second Amendment rights than myself. Then how does someone like me with these views also maintain these views of plant medicine and peace and love? And
Hmm.
on the surface level, that might seem to be ironic. And my response to that is really twofold. Is that, listen, we live in this world, and we can talk about what the illusion of this existence is, but we live in this reality with each other, and a lot of it involves a lot of things that are not good with some dangerous people. So we have to protect ourselves and protect our family, and there's nothing wrong with that. At the same time, and that's just the reality. Like, to ignore the reality would be crazy. At the same time, I can equally be about promoting peace and love, and let's help everybody, let's serve, let's be of service. And there really, if you really look at that, there isn't anything ironic about it at all. You can do both things at the same time, but it would be crazy to ignore the reality of the world we live in while trying to improve it, right? We can do both.
And so, all right, so that's a good segue for how did you get here? How did you get to the point you're at with with medical plants? Like, how did
Yeah.
you get to
So
ayahuasca?
yeah, I'll say this: I'm going to talk about the real story of what ultimately led me into it. It deserves. I haven't told the story yet. I'm trying to figure out as I put out my content, as I get, because I'm new in content too, right?
Hmm.
Um, when I'm going to tell it, how I'm going to tell it, because it deserves eons of time on its own. But to put that in a nutshell, so we can really segue into what got me there, I was running a business here in Arizona that got sued by the government for $79 million. I was sued for
Oh
$79
wow,
million. Fast forward to the end, I emerged from this paying absolutely zero,
good for you.
with no adverse effect legally at all. Nonetheless, if you've ever been a defendant in a civil action for $79 million and having to fight that for years, over 6 years, the toll that that takes on somebody is indescribable.
Hmm.
It was interesting for me as an attorney being on the other side of that as a client and a personal defendant. And so seeing the law and experiencing the law from both sides really was an unbelievable lesson now in retrospect, years and years and years later. But going through that was as traumatic as you could ever imagine. So six
And
years into a horrific experience where I was devastated in every way you can. I couldn't do business anymore. Financially, I was devastated. And I'm trying to exist, not knowing what I was going to do from one day to the next. Totally lost as you could be.
I feel
And
that.
at, on a different level from your own experience, you can relate, right? You wake up and you have no idea what the hell you're waking up into, and it's. I don't want to. I really don't want to compare it to what it's like as like a soldier in war, because I would that wouldn't be appropriate, right? But in terms of like PTSD, in terms of waking up in a war every day, being in fight or flight every day, not knowing what was going to come next, and anticipating terror, essentially. When the government is coming at you, man, it's terror. And with unlimited power, unlimited resources, and and then you can't really survive in it because you're kind of like toxic. People don't know what they can do. They don't know what's right or what's wrong, and you're trying to live. You've got your family. You've got to support yourself, and it's trauma like on a level that few people understand. So this finally gets resolved after 6+ years, and then I was like, people say, well, then it was over. But when you've been devastated for all this time, it's not really over. It's like if you've been attacked by a bear, there's nothing that's over about it. You're destroyed, right? And you've got scars that will never heal. and you're a new person, and you've got to pick yourself up and put yourself back together where you were never going to be 100% of what you were before. And I wasn't actually seeking out plant medicines directly, but I will say, looking back, that certainly set the table for my being receptive to something, because I was looking for something that, like, some kind of salvation. And not that I necessarily expected that from plant medicine and ayahuasca, which was my first entree, but I had a couple of friends who were looking into it, who we ultimately decided, yes, I will try that. And this is coming from someone who had no experience with drugs. I mean, I had smoked marijuana a little bit, but I wasn't a marijuana smoker really at that time. I started to smoke, but that was it. I had never in my life tried a psychedelic substance or had an experience before ayahuasca. So I just jumped totally right in, and it saved me. It saved me. So that's what led me into it. And the experience I had was absolutely 100% directly related to this experience, where I had developed a deep-seated anger that absolutely was eating me alive inside, because I had developed this hatred for, what was an unfounded persecution. Now, that's not to say that I don't have some responsibility for things, and I'm big on saying that. Like, I wasn't slinging pizzas, right? I wasn't selling slices, right? Obviously, the fact that this was all dismissed, I paid nothing, I had no legal, no adverse ramifications from it. I'm a lawyer in good standing for, almost 30 years. None of that has changed. I will acknowledge responsibility for things, and I will get into that, when appropriate. But I want to put that, out in front, because I say, and I just did content on this today, you are responsible for whatever results come from the decisions you make and the actions you take, from the intended and unintended results and consequences of the waves of the energy that you put out into the universe. Having said that, this case was dismissed. They did nothing to really move this case forward. And ultimately, after administration, they dismissed this case. So I had this anger. And the ayahuasca experience led me to a situation where I came face to face with the two people that were, on the face of it, front and the front and, let's say, like, face of, like, the government, right? Maybe symbolically so. They were the people, but let's say they were the government symbolically. And I came face to face with them, and the experience was one that put me in a place where I, like, came head to head with them and said, you know what? I understand the pain that you are now going through. I can feel the pain you're going through. And that could only be something that would, like, hurt people, that would allow you to attack someone the way you've attacked me. You have to be undergoing some pain yourself in order to do this. I feel your pain. And forget about me, I feel sympathy and compassion for you, for the pain that you are enduring that is leading you to do what you're doing against me. And I feel for you, and don't worry about myself. And that's what plant medicine does. It takes you out of the ego-based defense mechanisms and the revenge mechanisms and the anger, and allows you to love your enemy. I'm sorry, enemy, that you're going through the pain that you are, that's causing you to hurt me. That
And
is the most unbelievable experience you could have.
and I'm even going through that with cannabis now that I'm finally off of pharmaceuticals completely. Now that that fog of whatever they put in those things is clear, I'm having this, like, revelation about life.
Yeah.
That I'm unfortunately in my bed every day. And, like, I'm sorry, I'm spasming a little bit. It happens. I'm sitting a little bit longer than I usually do. I stand up, I sit down, I move
Yeah.
around a lot. I usually pace around.
Yeah.
but I need to make a life for myself, so I can't do that from my chair. But I'm glad
Yeah.
that you're here from your journey and that you were able to get some clarity out of plants, out of something that is so simple. It's been here forever. It's been forever. They didn't make it. It's been here, and they've been using it for thousands of years. These are the generations of human beings that have used it, and it's connection with the earth and with the universe that is just beyond comprehension. I've never taken a psychedelic, and honestly, I'm not sold, and I'm not too interested in them yet. I still need to know for myself a little bit, and that's why I'm going to keep having conversations like that with people like you.
Understood.
Something that scared me about the psychedelic journey. So, like, you have Aaron Rodgers, right? Who's one character. And then you have someone like Luigi Mangione, who, for me, my story and his stop at he started taking psychedelics and then he did a crazy thing. Like, I have a fusion in the same spot.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what did he do? What was his story?
He was taking a little bit of ayahuasca, some DMT, as far as I had heard and
Mm,
read. And he had suffered a back injury and he had an L5 fusion,
mhm,
L5S1. And
mm.
I had a fusion there. And I recovered from it. This is a completely separate injury that I'm even going through right now. Completely recovered from my S5, and I can see his picture of his, and that kid was suffering.
Yeah.
Be it as you may, that kid was suffering. Do I agree with what he did? Absolutely not. No, you can't do that. But he was suffering, and no one was answering him. And then he started going through losing his head. And for someone as smart as he was, I get that, because I lost my head. And I lost my
Mm.
ability to think and my ability to like read books and to have
Yeah.
a conversation, especially with people I loved. Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't show emotion for so long in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid I would lose that if I started taking psychedelics. I would start
I
losing my
okay.
emotional side.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't go there, right? I don't recommend psychedelics for anybody.
Hmm.
I think it's a calling, right? So when people ask me, do you recommend? I say no. I was called. Other people are called. People are continually awakening to this and being called. Having said that, they're not for everybody. And I'm not in the business of recommending. I'm in the business of getting the message out and talking to people who are receptive and providing information, education, and comfort in terms of the safety of it to people that are exploring, curious, and willing. So I definitely would not go to the extent to even theorize that somehow this was a good kid who, but for psychedelics, wouldn't have committed murder. Absolutely not, right? I mean, the
Okay.
fact that someone might have done that doesn't mean at all. I would never even, because there's nothing in the experience that would push someone to like violence, even a psychotic break. And
But
that's like a fear I understand, but
and they try
I've
to
never heard
bridge
of
that
it in
fear with
practice.
cannabis as well. They try to tell you that cannabis is going to cause schizophrenia, which
Well, look, listen, if you're predisposed, and listen, look, obviously, like and I have no idea, and I don't even want to suggest, but he might have had an underlying, um, uh, uh, psychosis or something that could be, right? I mean, obviously, like it sounds like he's committed murder, right? He could have had this
hmm
underlying condition. For people like that, psychedelics are absolutely not recommended, right?
yes.
So there's a small group of people for whom they absolutely are not appropriate. But for the norm, for the mainstay of the population, there is nothing to fear from the psychedelic experience. Nothing. Nothing physical, nothing long lasting. In fact, I mean, obviously, the overwhelming results of people subjectively will tell you that it's life changing, unbelievably positive. For people that have like even a negative experience, even years after, they'll tell you, looking back on this, what I thought was negative was actually maybe one of the best things that ever happened to me. But going through the experience could be very trying. And I have had very trying experiences, but that is part of the
How
process. That's part of the journey.
One of your experiences that I would like to talk to you about was you said you saw Hitler, and that's a popular thing among among Jews and Germans, which like that's a guilt thing, right? That has to be. That's derived from guilt from both ends.
I mean, you know, yeah, on one level you could say, guilt, all right? Okay, of course. On another level, energetically, I don't know how to label that. I don't want to label it. I don't know. It's an observation that is it's just something to explore. I did not have I don't like I'm from the Ashkenazi Jews, the European line of Jews and
Hmm.
descendants, but I didn't have family even, from the Holocaust. Grandparents, relatives, I had none directly.
And is that where it harbors from? Like a sense of like, does that make you less? Does that give you less of a claim to Judaism and the suffering that, yeah,
No. I,
like,
I mean,
and not that you feel that way, not that that's how you feel,
yeah,
that's subconsciously though. Like, there's a lot of, I'm a Catholic, so there's a
yeah,
lot of Catholic guilt for things I never did and I don't even think about. But then I go to church and I'm like, did I kill Jesus?
yeah,
Hey,
yeah. So I don't have an answer for it, and I'm the first to say the psychedelic experience, like life, a lot of you, we. I don't have answers. I don't pretend to have answers. Um, I don't know what to make of that, and I didn't even know that until a couple of years later. That I was told that it's a very common thing for Jews and Germans to encounter Hitler. This now brings us to delve further into who we are as soul beings having this human experience in this human body, and that maybe as souls we have encountered things in parallel lives and past lives. Now we're really getting
now,
into it, where there's still trauma that we are experiencing in this incarnation, even though we may not be aware of it.
like, do you believe that when you go into this place and you go into this world with psychedelics and you're in front of someone like Hitler, is that
Yeah.
him? Is that his energy? You think that's like still in this world for some reason?
Yes, I do believe yes, yes, because the energy doesn't dissipate, the energy doesn't die. And now I'll go make this general statement, having a specific experience in psychedelics in my first DMT, dimethyltryptamine experience, where I subjectively feel like I went to heaven and I know we don't die ever. And that we return to where we came from, and that I believe that we come back and we've had innumerable human experiences, um, and have experienced things as and that this is a temporary embodiment, this physical manifestation that we go through now, and that's not to diminish the physical experience. This is the most unbelievable, cherished experience we could have, that we're alive together, that we're here together, and that we can do so many good things, and that we're here to basically show love and help people and be of service as much as we can. But this is not fundamentally who we are. And
No.
that the experience that I have had when I'll say generally like heaven, which is heaven like, which is I'm in this space having the exact uninterrupted consciousness experience of who I am as an individual. So like when I'm there in the space, I feel like I'm David, I'm me. But I had this innate knowing that I come from this place. And I was confused in my own mind that how do I know why am I so familiar with this space? Why do I know it like this? I shouldn't know this. That this is the place I come from, that I felt like undeniably that this is home.
And
And I
that's
felt
must
a
have been incredibly
bliss.
like rewarding feeling though, too.
You cannot describe how rewarding it is. I felt a bliss in uninterrupted love that is indescribable beyond anything. So I'll call it God, I'll call it heaven. You could put any name you want to put on it. That the only thing I'll say that without a label is that this is where I come from, this is home, this is where I believe we return to, at least temporarily. And I had a feeling like a break from life. Like feel like you went to a place where you come out of all of the difficulty of life, and I felt like a breath, like a relief, like, oh, like a sigh of relief, like, oh my goodness, I'm just back. I'm back to where I come from. Like, this is really where we exist. This is who we are. There is unbounded love. There is no worry. This is bliss. This is just like of a magnitude that you can't even put into words. And one day we'll go back there, right? For now, I'm back to the daily life and the daily grind and the hardships and all the good things and the bad things and the way we experience them in everyday life. But
And
but you come to it with an understanding that I will go back there. And how does that help me live today in this life?
like how so now okay, a good question now would be like how often do you go there? How often like you could smoke cannabis every day. Would I recommend it? No.
Right.
No, not at
So
all,
the,
but you
the, the
could.
psychedelic experience is something, and this is again different for everybody. I've known, people, and I'm not an experienced psychonaut as they go, right? By comparison to some other people, there is no comparison. There is what's right for you. If you're asking me, this is something that's done maybe a few times a year.
Mhm.
My first my that I spent so much time integrating my first ayahuasca experience. I didn't do it again for 4 years after.
Oh wow. So that's how it could be a
But
long term. So you can go once and never need it again and have so much clarity and so much healing that maybe you don't
you
need it.
could. You could. And so I say there is no clock or schedule. You will feel called to the medicine. And 4 years went by. Then I had my second unbelievable experience. And then only a year went by after that where I had a third experience. So there's no like, you will feel the calling when it's right to go back. And there's a lot of anxiety and trepidation, even for me with some experience now that doesn't dissipate because it's courageous. You call it, like a psychonaut, kind of like an astronaut who's going into space. And I could only feel what anxiety you might have on that rocket that's going to propel you into space. Like that's something like I don't think I could ever do, right? But and I don't want to compare it necessarily, but going into the psychedelic journey takes a lot of preparation mentally, so and physically, like with ayahuasca especially, but mentally just the commitment to being able to do that, to enter a space where you don't know what's going to happen. You don't have, the same kind of controls that we think we have on our body and daily existence. So it takes a lot of courage to enter the space going into that and knowing that you might encounter some difficulty, but it's knowing that the difficulty is there for you as a lesson to teach you to overcome, and that you will come out of it with another tool or tools that will then help you navigate your life. It's all about how to improve life, your
And
daily life.
and that's like so important in improving how you live and how you embrace life every day. And
Yes.
I've had like a whirlwind 2 years, and I don't know, something in the last week or so has just like really hit a fuck. Maybe it's longer, and I'm just noticing it in the last week or so. But really lit a fire under my ass and told me, "Hey, I see a
Hmm.
future now that like I didn't see for myself 3 months ago." A year and a half ago, future I didn't think
Yeah.
would exist for me anymore, and I could hope that that exists, but like now I want to get there. You know what I mean? And being
Yeah.
able to find that introspection sounds like something that you can do while on these psychedelics. And I get that there's a big mental aspect and mental healing journey on psychedelics, and that's
Yeah.
incredible. And I'm glad that you were able to
Yeah.
get the help that you needed, and that you still continue to get the help that you need from it. And that's
Yeah.
really inspirational that you
Yeah,
found what worked.
it's an ongoing relationship with the medicines, right? And we can get into the different medicines, of course, but like ayahuasca, it's like, people ask me, can I take it? And I responded to a comment that someone made on one of my videos not too long ago, saying like, how many times do you have to take it to be kind of like cured? And I laughed at that on one level. It's like, do you go to the gym? Yes. Why? Because it makes me healthy. It makes me stronger. So when are you done going to the gym? Well, I'm never done going to the gym, right? It's an ongoing, lifelong process. Now, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean you're going to do plant medicines on the schedule and regularity that you would go to the gym, like people would go every day. Um, but the relationship is something that develops, that's ongoing, and so in some sense, you may never be done with it. I have, heard like a lady talk about that she had done it a number of times, gotten what she was supposed to get out of it, and was told by Mother Ayahuasca that your time on earth now, your relationship with the medicine is finished and you don't need it anymore. And some people will come to that conclusion on their own. I feel like I'm just not called to it anymore. Totally okay. Some people might have one experience and be done. I have done ayahuasca with a girl who has done it 45 times.
Wow.
And so,
And what is the price
no
point for
answer.
something like this? Like how much? Because this is all out of pocket because no one will cover it.
It's very well, okay. So talk about ayahuasca versus like ketamine, which is a totally different, not a psychedelic, and it's prescribed, and so just to kind of understand what the gamut is. When I did ayahuasca and had a life changing experience, this goes back to 2017. It cost me $160 for the night to change your life.
160 a
Okay.
night at a hotel.
Okay, so well, this was out in the desert in Tucson,
Even
with no
better.
bathrooms or anything like that. Okay, so that's a whole different thing. So now like I think like yeah, $250, $500 for like a weekend. You could have like not that you're staying over, but if you're local, you could do it for a couple of nights, go home, come back for the second day. $500 for a life changing experience, totally, I mean, in relative terms, completely inexpensive. Obviously, you can go to, there's high end solutions now if you want to go to Costa Rica or Peru. Now you're traveling, you're staying in a retreat, so you can expect to spend thousands of dollars on that. But there are an ever growing number of local solutions wherever you are, where you don't have to spend a lot of money to experience this, and you can absolutely expect, even for that very little amount of money, to have an absolutely safe and structured and educated experience with people that are trained in the traditional medicines as ayahuasqueros who could administer the treatment, the medicines to you in a wonderful, safe and loving environment, and you're not spending a lot of money. That's ayahuasca. Other medicines or other substances
Hmm.
are different. You know, and
And
we can talk about that.
yeah, and I would love to talk about that. And I would love to talk about more what would
Yeah,
help, like even
yeah,
is ayahuasca's for someone like me with a chronic pain, like especially a
yeah.
nerve pain and a nerve damage. I'm so sorry about this, dog.
Right, right. No, no. So let me say this because I've experienced a number of psychedelics. You know, I think ayahuasca has certainly helped people and given relief from chronic pain. Will it for you and for an individual? Who knows? Don't know. Would multiple ayahuasca experiences do that? Don't know. So having said that, would psilocybin, would mushrooms do that? Maybe, maybe not. So it may be a little bit of hit and miss, and the particular medicine is certainly on an individual basis. You might have to experiment a little bit. Certainly, no harm is going to come out of it, and you might get unbelievable benefits, but it might not relieve you of the pain. But there are certain psychedelics have been known to address pain in maybe better than others. So I would say people suffering from chronic pain, if you're open to this, research it, right? And
Hmm.
it might not be on your first try, but get into researching it. I'm not recommending this or that. What I'm recommending is there are unbelievable results that can come of it, and you should be you if you're willing, be open to the research, right? So that, you could find the relief for you. And if ayahuasca didn't do it, maybe psilocybin will, maybe ibogaine, which is something else which is not as readily available, but has had unbelievably tremendous results. Here I think is what happens. Like you have like centralized pain syndrome where you have chronic pain, and then you have these patterns, this like pain loop pattern that develops in the brain. And like Michael Pollan has talked about this after his experiences with different psychedelics,
Well,
where he talks about, I think, a neurologist who says what the psychedelic process does is, when we develop processes and thought processes, and now pain being one of those, they're like ski slopes where like they become so ingrained in the brain that this is how we react. And then where does pain come from? I certainly don't want to overstep and talk about, medicine and neurology, where the people suffer from chronic pain and why. That's beyond my pay scale, okay? So I'm just saying, go into the research, talk to your doctors about it. But generally speaking, what they can do is take these like ski slopes where like, that are so ingrained, and then you go down the mountain and you fall right into that ingrained slope that you've been skiing down year after year after year. And the psychedelic experience can like lay new snowfall, and then that what can help you maybe start anew and then bypass these very ingrained patterns that are responsible for causing chronic pain.
and so Ibogaine, let's go back there.
Yeah.
That is very helpful for like a lot of veterans. That's huge. Rick Perry is doing, the former governor of Texas, is doing a lot of work with this.
Ibogaine is an African shrub that's been known for, 120 years, and is being used a lot, by, and has been, so that's what I want to say. It's been for pain in particular. I've read a lot of studies that have been unbelievable for chronic pain patients.
But it's so hard to get, and they don't, not here again. Like New York is impossible. I'm never gonna get it here,
Yeah,
and they're never gonna
Ibogaine
send me
is
somewhere to find it. They won't.
Ibogaine is, and I think that will be changing, of course. So what's more readily available? Psilocybin, obviously ayahuasca. That may or may not, but if I'm someone who's like, listen, I'm willing to try anything because I'm like on the verge of like suicide here and I'm open to it, I think it certainly is not going to hurt you. And if it doesn't relieve your chronic pain, that may be too big of an ask, right? So I'm
Uh-huh.
not saying that is a reasonable expectation, but it's not going to hurt you.
But it's also not reasonable to expect any single thing to work on its own to help you. No, it does not work that way.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair to say too. Yes, that's
But
fair to
like the
say.
ibogaine could like bring some relief, and hey, maybe I'll go on longer walks. Or like I've tried to go back to the gym a little bit. It's not for me. I go to walk.
Yeah,
Like there's nothing
yeah,
I can do at the gym that's gonna help me. And I got recommended by the doctor to go, and
yeah.
I'm not even working at a tenth of the weight I was at some
Yeah.
points. It's not it. I'm
Right.
just not the person that I was, and that's
Right.
fine.
Right. And you may be continue to use prescribed medications, right? Like, so I'm not suggesting that this is a panacea
And
or that this is going to work for anybody. Like, I'm not saying that at all.
I think that for me, I think I have one more step before I even really dive into this as an option for me. Right now, my
Yeah.
thing is peptides. I
Yes.
am super interested in peptides, and you mentioned so there's good and bad things bad things happen in the world, and you have to take the lessons from it.
Yeah.
So when for some reason, this Luigi thing spoke to me because it was my story in the news to a
Right.
point again, brain fog and stomach and all of this nonsense that he was going through that no one wanted to help him with.
Right.
And I don't even know where I was
Right.
going with that. I'm so sorry. I lost my
Right.
train of thought.
Right. Well, when you're on
Oh,
peptides, like then you can go
the
to
peptides.
something which I had. Yeah.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
So I started reading his books. So I started reading books on
Yeah.
his Goodreads list that he was reading about back pain. And I'm reading one book called Crooked by Caroline Jacobson or Jenkins or something along those lines. And I'll post a link to it maybe somewhere else later. And I've read about 50 pages of it, and I really deep dove into it. And had I not known that these resources existed from a horrible thing that happened, where
Yeah.
would I be? And how many more people like me exist that have no idea that this help is out there? So the minute you start asking about these things, I found out doctors break up with you. Like it's an
Yeah.
incredible.
Because that. they're not trained in it, and then they poo-poo it, or some of them will say, hey, look, there may be helpful, but I couldn't recommend it. We just don't have the evidence. And as a physician, what else are they supposed to
Oh,
say?
great.
And that
And I
I
would
you know I
love for
agree
you to
with
tell
that.
me that. And I would love for you to say that.
You
But
know,
when you sit down and tell me that an epidural is a more natural solution, no, you want
right.
to get paid.
Well, peptides are now, and you're seeing like a crackdown on peptides, right? Which is heavily influenced by big pharma again. But
Mm-hmm.
like, go to another like another naturally occurring peptide is combo, which comes from a secretion from a frog. I can't remember which particular frog, but like 5-MeO DMT is another substance that comes from the Sonoran desert toad, another frog that Mike Tyson has talked about a lot. Combo comes from another frog, and it's an opioid peptide that has been unbelievably helpful, like in dealing with pain. So these things are naturally occurring. So to say like I'm not ready to go to those, understand that a lot of things develop naturally. LSD, which obviously people take, which also has been good for chronic pain. I'm not saying it's the best out of the psychedelics necessarily, but it has been known to be very effective in pain relief. But LSD, although synthesized now, was derived from a fungus that grows from ergot, which is a fungus that grew on I think rye. So even synthesized compounds now, psychedelics, have an origin that is natural. So let's look to that, and why wouldn't we want to employ these natural medicines in our own
Be-
health solution?
because for the same reason why they're banned from the UFC, they will fix people.
Yeah,
They will
yeah,
fix people, and that is
yeah,
not good for the bottom
yeah.
dollar, bottom line. Fixing
Right,
people is not as good as getting them in the door every 3 months for an epidural. It's not as good.
right, right,
And
right,
that's like
right,
crazy to me. And that's crazy to me that like they don't care how old you are when you walk through the door. They'll play with your
right,
age no matter how old you are. I started this journey when
right,
I was 25, and I still can't believe I'm here. I can't believe this is where my life
right,
got to.
right,
And it's hard for me to
right,
believe it. And it's just like
right,
the doctors don't help. And you realize
right,
that, and then you start changing
right,
things. And you start changing doctors, and when you find a doctor that does help, oh my god, it just screams at you. I had from doing more research about the doctors that were taking care of me. I had a stomach problem that I can openly talk about because there is no litigation on it as of yet, because they will not associate it to the medication I was on yet,
right.
and that's hopefully going to happen. But for now, it didn't, and I got really sick. So I went to the hospital and I met a doctor there who works for Optum. Have you ever heard of Optum Health?
Yeah, I'm in my primary care is Optum now. So now
I
I'm
do.
dealing with this
I'm
like,
very anti Optum. I went to his office and I thought it was a
yeah,
fake doctor's office. I turned to my mom, who drives me to a lot of my appointments. I was like, "Hey, Ma, something's up here. Let's see what they say." And this guy stuck tubes down, up everything and down everything to look through me.
right,
And he came back with Salmonella and H. pylori. I don't know. You're the doctor. He gives me pills. I take them. So I asked Doc, why'd I have those things? What happened?
right,
Oh, those are
right,
naturally occurring. You just, something in your body is like not fighting it off. I said, so what is doing that? Which of my pills is slowing down my immune system, or my autoimmune system rather, that I'm not killing these things that are in my body? Why would you put me on a pill? Why wouldn't you try to
right.
figure out and take me off of pills first? And they told me to get off the cannabis. And that's when I turned around and said, the one medicine that they make me pay for out of my own pocket, because they won't cover it yet,
Right.
um, is the medicine they're telling me not to take, and I'm throwing my guts up, and nothing. This is the only thing that settles my stomach, so I quit everything cold turkey. I finished his pills,
Right.
and I never saw him again. Never saw the stomach doctor again. I got another stomach doctor who then I said, "Hey, no pills, no surgery, no pills," and I have no acid reflux anymore. And I weaned off of all of everything. I'm off of everything. He put me on one pill because he wanted to wean me off of everything else, and it worked.
Yeah.
And that's a doctor that cares. That's a doctor that wants to help people. And then when I found out about Optum, after Luigi Mangioni's story or his case came about, is that Optum is owned by United Healthcare. and that there's a lot of history between the United telling doctors who are in malpractice lawsuits and debt and have alimony up the ass, go write scripts, go
Yeah.
perform procedures, go pay those bills off. And it's
Yeah.
crazy that Optum is popping up everywhere. I didn't know they existed, and now they're everywhere, everywhere.
Yeah. Well, like my brother-in-law is an ophthalmologist who's in Optum now, and so I'll say there are really good physicians. You know,
And I'm sure there are
the
everywhere there is.
yeah,
Just like
of
the
course
police
there
force, there's good
are.
cops and bad cops. There's good doctors and bad
Yeah,
doctors.
yeah. Certainly the method that you engage with doctors now and make appointments, it's like you're going through these like mass like call centers now for like these efficiencies and
Oh, it's
everything.
the
It's not like
worst.
you can call your doctor. And by the way, if you're sick, you can't even go to the doctor anymore.
Mm-mm.
You don't go to your doctor. You go to your like local like up the street close by
Urgent care.
urgent care, right? Because you can't even get like a sick appointment. You
Yeah,
know,
I refuse to do that. I do it if I
everything's
absolutely have
been
to. It's got to be dire.
right. So to deny like somebody the access to something that's natural is kind of insane. And by the way, like take the most powerful psychedelic that we'll talk about, which is like the main, what people understand to be the main psychoactive compound in ayahuasca, which is DMT, dimethyltryptamine. You make dimethyltryptamine in your body. No one knows exactly
And
why, where it comes from. We theorize, and I believe in my personal experience that it's from the pineal gland, but you make it endogenously. If we're
and
making it in the body and it exists in plants all over the world and it
and we
has
need
these
it
profound,
for some
right?
reason.
So this is it works. You can't overdose on it. It's natural. Then
And
like let's think about that. And why? How could you deny somebody that who's in chronic pain, who has no solution, who's not being helped, and is like maybe on the verge of suicide because they just can't take it anymore?
and it's they for what I think it's the abbreviations. When you put something down to 3 letters, DMT, it's scary.
Yeah.
And they know
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
They know that. They have to give it a scary name and they have to make people a little bit
yeah,
afraid of it for some reason. And like, oh, DMT, oh, I don't want to touch that. And then you're like, I'm not gonna touch it. Yeah, and I'm really
yeah.
not. It's not something that I'm looking forward to yet. But it's something I'm like willing to listen to conversations about now because I was not
Listen,
an
if
open minded on
somebody,
cannabis.
but if somebody out there, right, like if one person listening to this is saying like, I am open to it, and we'll start researching it, and maybe we'll take that, and if that were to resolve their chronic pain, like the fact that I'm not doing anything, I'm nobody. I'm just a messenger of this. So if I can just tell this story that would open somebody to the possibility, and if they went out and found this as a solution and it helped them, I mean, that's what I live for. That is the only thing that I live for. I'm not giving them the relief. I'm nobody in this. But the process of just bringing the message and information to help someone on the way to heal themselves is the only thing I'm about. I want zero credit for that. Again, I'm nobody in this process. I'm not responsible for that, but I am a way shower. I'm like a janitor, right? Like I'm just here to say, oh, here's the way, here's the elevator. Okay, I have nothing to do in this process, but I have seen the light down there. I have nothing to do with it, but the light is down there, and if you're open to it, yeah, take a look this way, and maybe that will help you. And if it did, that would make me the happiest person in
You're
the
like
world.
you're more like the like a map at a mall because there's so many ways to go from here. You're not just like one
Yeah,
direction. You know, you're
no,
not just like the light at the end of the tunnel because once you get to the end, oh my God, that tunnel has 15 different ways to go. And there's
there's
so
no
many
end,
things you
right?
can do with food and plants. And like if you don't want to do ayahuasca and you don't want to do these plants,
Yeah.
dude, eat fruit and vegetables. Eat red meat.
Well, like if you've gone to the doctor recently, the absolute epidemic and dramatic unexplained increase in the instances of colon cancer for young people. They've now like lowered the age from 50 to 45 as a guideline is related to what? It's obviously related to diet.
And
I mean, there's no question.
like I don't know. I did a lot of introspection this year. This 2025 specifically, the last 4 months has been a lot of like, where did my people come from? Italians, and I'm very big into my ancestry. I've always been into into it. But like my grandmother lived until she was 90, 88 years old. My parents' generation hopes to make it to 75 right
Yeah.
now. And it's
Yeah.
said that our life expectancy is going down, but like what did they do that we didn't? Well, they told me olive oil was bad for me. These people would drink
Right.
it out of the bottle. They would drink it, right?
Right.
So why were they
Well,
doing
just
that? They were using butter.
yeah.
And these are just natural things that they don't want us to get better with. So what else are they hiding? If they're hiding the stuff that they let us have and what it actually does
Yeah.
for us, eggs are bad for you.
No. But I mean, like you can eat bread in Europe and have no problem. You eat bread here, and people think it's like the carbs. It's not carbohydrate necessarily.
No,
It's
no
not
one
limited
has
to that.
celiac. No one's
No,
whatever it is.
no. You never
Gluten
heard that. Like in my
intolerance.
generation, peanut allergies and all this stuff. I mean, this
No,
is
you're allergic to
all,
chemical cleaners.
yeah, right. It's yeah,
Like,
that's what's in the
duh.
food.
Duh.
It's in
Oh,
the
no.
pesticides. I mean, we see
Okay,
this.
okay, sure. They can put this much bleach in your food, but when everything has this much bleach, well, it stacks. It does. It's not like, well, you had 3 cookies. It has only enough bleach for each cookie. No, those 3 cookies
Yeah,
are 3 times the bleach you should have had.
yeah, yeah.
And like for me, this like so going back to my roots and being what my people did, what they did to
Right.
survive, and what the Italian people for thousands of years who have existed have done to eat and survive, and like emperors and these great literal god-looking figures. They weren't they weren't drinking Celsius in the morning when they woke up. Like they weren't, and that's another wormhole that we can go down forever. Like all of these flavors for these energy drinks started popping up when they started pulling vapes off the shelves. Why? Because all of these companies that own, Zyn is owned by Philip Morrison that owns food companies. So
Yeah.
this juice that they had in their vapes that now they can't put in their
Yeah.
vapes anymore, they're gonna go put it in something else. So your kids that were addicted to vapes are now addicted to energy drinks.
I still smoke. I still smoke marijuana. I'll tell you that when I cut back my use of marijuana dramatically, it helped me with my relationship with the plant because there was a time when I was abusing marijuana. Like anything else, too much is no good.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that, when vape became popular, I started to vape marijuana, and that was a disaster.
That's
So
the worst.
I
That's
have
what
given
killed
up
me.
the vape maybe a year and a half ago was the last time I vaped, and I will never go back to the vape again.
The
The only
vape is
way
the
I'll consume it,
reason.
even though I'd rather smoke it, once in a while, even, like, so that cut 90% out of my marijuana consumption was the vape because
Mhm.
you're on that vape all the time. You can do it easily. There's no smell. Nobody
And
really
that's the
knows.
problem with it. And that was,
Oh,
for me,
terrible.
it was like I'm in pain all the time. And I got to a point where I was in a lot of pain and I needed to be
Yeah.
high almost
Yeah.
all of the time. And I didn't realize
Yeah.
it quite yet.
Right.
And
Right.
then I was like, all right, I have to cut
Right.
something. I can't be
Right.
smoking flower and then in between the 3 hours that I wait before I go out and smoke again, I'm also hitting the
Right.
vape. No, no, no,
Right.
no, no, no. It can't be that.
Right.
Edibles are a different disaster for me, at least. It's like
They're
either
they're
there's
they're
no
harder.
relief, there's no
Yeah.
relief, or I can't drive for 2 days.
Yeah, they can be hard to navigate, whereas like at least the vape or flower, you don't get the intensity and you don't get the duration. So it's a little bit
Mhm.
easier to dose for people. Totally understand that. The thing with the vape is like, what is the carrier agent in these vapes? And so like one of the main ones will be uh, like propylene glycol, which like while safe maybe in other food products or at least touted to be safe, that doesn't mean that when you vape it, right? Like you can ingest it in a food, vaping that into your lungs, nobody has any idea what that is. And I don't think
No,
we've seen the writing on the wall for that, and we won't for some years to come, but it's not going to be good. I mean, like I have no medical basis to say that, but it's not going to be good. This vape is not good.
no, no. You shouldn't. When it exists as a plant, why are you taking it as a synthetic?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
smoking it. You're still
Yeah.
inhaling it. Listen, there's other synthetics
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
take in other ways and other know-hows and what have you.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Like, come on, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
So, I mean, at least we've seen like, the one benefit is like as like because right now like we've seen marijuana proliferate recreationally, and it's been really safe. In a regulated basis. Like I can go to a number of dispensaries and I'll get very safe product, which by the way has dropped dramatically in price, even though like places like Arizona has if you don't have a medical card, the tax on it is so high. But still the prices have come down just based on supply and demand where you can buy marijuana way cheaper than you could even 5 years ago, way cheaper. So that's been good for the consumer. But if you look at the way that's proliferated, it's been really safe. It's raised taxes, and there are no adverse effects of marijuana. Obviously, access to kids, has that increased? Yes, that's not good for students, like young people. The effect of marijuana on the brain, not good for the
No,
developing
not.
brain, not good, not good. And
I'm I'm
so
lucky that I wasn't
we'll
introduced to it until I was 25 at the way I was. Thank God my
yeah,
brain was developed. Thank God my brain
yeah,
was developed because I would not have broken out
yeah.
of this fog if it wasn't.
And so you're going to see that like when you have more access, then you're going to see some increase obviously in younger people. That's not good. You're not going to be able to eradicate that. That's just a known, this is something we're going to have to continually deal with. Um, but nonetheless, as a general, on a general basis, it's been very good. It's worked very well around the country, like no epidemic. I know Texas is coming out of it in an ass backwards way, saying this is this gateway drug and total crap,
Yeah, stuff that like we haven't
totally
heard in like
backward.
20 years.
It's ridiculous, but
I was
because
just
we've seen the evidence, it's
once
good.
Colorado came out with it, the gateway drug stuff stopped.
It stopped and it's total baseless. But so at least it's provided the platform for like a regulated plant medicine. So now for the first state, like for people saying, look, I might be into mushrooms, but I don't know where to get mushrooms. I'm scared of that. I want it to be regulated. You can go to Oregon. Now you may be far from Oregon, but Oregon has now licensed facilities that are distributing, serving psilocybin mushroom journeys. They've done over 8,000 of these journeys with zero like adverse like cases. So again, like if you're someone who's saying I would consider it, but I want it to be on a legal basis, you have Oregon. Oregon now is the test market that's done exceedingly well, and I think will provide the platform for other states to pick it up for it to proliferate across the country like marijuana. Um, and they've had great cases. So go look at Oregon because they've now like they're doing studies on it and they've had great success. Is it good in my mind that you have to take it legally on this limited basis? Not necessarily, no, but at least it's there and it probably will, it'll be it's an example that is done very well. And so I think on that basis, it's a good thing.
And sorry, I get flustered. It's like the way I don't. This is the most upsetting part about all of this.
Yeah,
It
understand. I get
really
it.
is, and
I
that's a
hear
big
you.
part of why I want to do this, and I want to do this on video because I want
Yeah.
people to see me that have not seen me in so long because I've been
Hmm.
isolated. It's like you lose friends, you lose people, but
Yeah.
like it's all part of the journey. It's all part of the journey,
Mhm.
and that's what this whole experience is about. Whether it be part of it is like the depression is crazy. So yeah, the cannabis helps for that, but you can't use it for that. Because if you start using it just
No.
solely for feeling better, it becomes a problem.
So let me suggest you bring up a really good point here. For someone who's like, I'm not up for, I'm afraid, I'm scared, I have anxiety about like go doing mushrooms. Like I just like don't think I could do that. Understood. However, if you talk about microdosing now, where you'll be taking this very, very low level, where on the conscious like level, you won't feel the effects of psilocybin. It's such
Mhm.
a low dose. We're talking like microdose, very, very low. But as you get it into the system on a regular basis, people are seeing unbelievable results from like depression like symptoms. And for people that don't have a severe condition, um, but that are entertaining microdosing, you have this elevated happiness. And you can't really point to it because you don't feel like you're not going on any psychedelic trip. But over time, as you get the psilocybin into the system, you exist happier, you're more positive, you have a better perspective. And so there's a middle ground. It's not all or nothing. So if someone's maybe open to it, please do some research into microdosing, because that might be the middle ground where, wow, it can have profound
And
effects where you really don't have to undergo a psychedelic journey.
that's where I would definitely be going. I think if I went
Yeah,
down a route, it would be with
yeah,
microdosing, because
yeah.
there is benefits, and I don't want to lose my brain anymore. That's the worst part about the
Right,
weed. That's the worst part about the
right.
cannabis. Yes, it gives me relief and I feel better, but then I just
Yeah,
lose my head, and I was lazy for a while through it. I didn't want to
yeah,
talk
yeah.
to certain people who now,
Right,
where are they? I hope I didn't ruin those
right,
relationships. I hope I can bring some
right,
of them back, and I'm trying. I'm trying. But
right.
like that's part of it, and seeing that vision for my future now, coming clear of this is so vivid, and wanting to chase it is such an incredible feeling, and knowing it's right, but not knowing what to do about it is like, how do I go about it from sitting in my chair? From
Yeah,
being in bed, and it's hard to do when you're injured and when you're even going
right.
through it, so finding the things that break you through it is so important. And
Yeah,
I don't know, I'm very excited with conversations like this, and for the work you're
yeah,
doing to help grow
yeah,
what could help people. And hey, like I will be open about this. Psychedelics are not for me at this time, even
yeah.
after talking about them for 2 hours. But this is only a 2 hour conversation,
Sure.
and there's so many more conversations to be had and to listen to. And like methylene blue can be helpful for
Yeah,
many things in your body that are not working, and a lot of like pain and chronic pain could latch onto like lack of dopamine or serotonin on top of being in pain.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And there's just so many
For
things, and they
sure.
don't want to blend them because they don't want to pay for them.
Right.
They don't want to
Yeah,
admit that these things go together.
yeah. And I think it's fair to say we've been focusing on pain and chronic pain, and this is the one, like the thing that I'm not, I'm kind of disappointed to see where it's going, because as it's going to proliferate, and as you're seeing like like psilocybin being legalized, and that's going to continue, you're going to see MDMA follow that as well. Um, and they're having these great effects on pain and depression and PTSD. But where we're losing, and where the benefit is that, like, the huge amount of the population that isn't suffering, like, luckily isn't suffering from any of these profound conditions, but they could also be helped. And like, I don't want to leave like the majority of people out who are fortunate enough not to have this, but they're not happy either, and their lives could be improved. And even if like a large portion of them don't want to go on a massive like psychedelic trip and have these journeys, but they could also experiment on a low level with microdosing, and it could help like the well people get better.
And
And so, like, let's not leave them out in the dust. While I know that, like, as these things become legalized, they're first going to be targeted to people with these conditions, and like, and medical, like resistant conditions. Like, we've
but
tried all these things. Let them take, MDMA or psilocybin, but you're leaving out the other people. But that's kind of the natural progression.
if microdosing is going to help, and I think it is, I think microdosing is going to be very good because it's going to open it to more people that are willing to do it.
Yeah,
Of course. And
yeah,
like
yeah,
I don't know, I think about kids. I think about kids who need help or who have been through trauma, and they don't understand it. Hey, they were 4 years old, but it's in there. It's
oh
somewhere in
yeah,
there, and they live with that. It's in their hearts. It's in their heads.
yeah,
They're gonna take it through their
yeah,
whole life. Or you can fix them when they're young.
yeah.
You can give a little something that helps them while they're growing to fix the broken neural pathways that were shattered by whatever trauma they may have been through. And we don't help. We just let people suffer. And unfortunately, we don't even do anything with the people that are suffering. There's no clinics or asylums, or we close asylums and we have crime.
Yeah. I've had people come out of like psychedelic experiences and say, this situation came up with me, this thing that happened when I was a kid, or this thing that my dad or my mom or something, and I hadn't thought about that in 30 years. And I would have, why would this come up in a psychedelic experience?
Hmm.
These are things that like occur, that happen to us, like when we're kids. that we process continually on a subconscious level that we don't know are affecting us. And these are the things that psychedelics can bring to the surface that can allow us to deal with and face and kind of get over. And those are like one of the miracles.
And so like for that aspect of like memory wise and
Yeah,
that's been my heart. I had a good memory. I could remember things that happened when I was 6 years old vividly. Like I was 3 years old, but I remember September 11th. I know when I saw a black cloud. I met my best friend, that one of my best friends that day, who
yeah,
I'm still friends with to this day. And I remember where we sat in that classroom, and I remember
yeah.
my father worked in the towers, and he did not go to work that day. Thank God, because he had to take me to school.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, thank God. But I remember him standing outside the diner that day and being on the phone. However, man, now I might not remember part of this conversation. Like even when we have been talking today, I've lost my train of
Yeah,
thought and I can't remember. And that is crazy to me. Like that, it's in there somewhere still. So I know it's in there,
yeah.
and I know I still have that
Oh,
instinct to
yeah.
go get it out. But it's just about those things that help you get it out, and you're helping people through your work with now you have this YouTube channel that you've been working on, and you want to tell us a little bit more about your journey through YouTube and content creating.
Yeah, so I to this day I had never posted anything on social media. I've had like, I've got a Facebook, um I have like Instagram profile but I never even go on Instagram. I'm like a TikTok follower but never had a profile. I don't have any interest in putting out anything about my life or anything that I do, or I'm going on this vacation, or go look at this, or I'm at like it's never for me. It's still not for me. So getting into content was as far away from anything I would typically do or be attracted to as you could have. And even as I've started this content now, which is really brand new, I still don't post anything about my personal life, my regular personal life. I have no interest in talking about that, or letting anybody know what I'm doing. I don't care. So what drove me to this is that I felt called and a need to tell people about my journeys, what the process is like, what the medicines can offer, what can you expect when going into a journey, what like the nuts and bolts and the A's and B's of the process is, what is this medicine compared to that medicine. So it's like, what can I kind of expect? And coming from someone like me who's like not an obvious like stereotypical hippie type, right? Like I'm someone that can cross over and talk to people from different backgrounds. And I can express what the experience is like, and I have, like, if I may say, like a credibility because I know how to speak to people at their level where they are, no matter who they are. And I think a lot of that came from being a trial lawyer, and I'm talking to juries, and I need to know what I'm saying, how it's communicated, so that you understand it the way you need to be. If it's a complicated subject, can I understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of it so that I can be a better communicator? And so half of it is like, what is the experience like? And then the other half is like, here's what I have gained. Here are the lessons that I've learned from these experiences. And here's how it has helped me in my life. Here's how I integrate them and use them in my life as a toolkit to improve my life, make me happier, make my relationships happier, make my family happier. Now, I don't always live up to that standard, and I fall well short of that standard, frequently. So again, as I'm on the path with everybody at the same time. I'm not a guru. I have not mastered everything. I am learning as everybody else is learning, but I know enough to know that I am on the path that other people can benefit from. So those two like main themes I've put together, and I had a lot of trepidation about getting in front of the camera. And I'm not, some of these early videos, and I'm at the very beginning of it, they're not that great. They're not the best produced. Like I started with like the camera down low and shooting up, and it doesn't look good. I don't look good, all of that crap. But I knew that going into it, but I knew that I just had to get in front of the camera, start talking to it, and getting it out there because people will benefit from it, not because of me, but because of the lessons that I've learned, because they're lessons for everybody. So if a few people will pick up on it, like the algorithm isn't picking me up all that well yet, I'm putting out the content. I don't have a lot of views. I don't have a lot of followers, but I'm not deterred by that. My mission is to just keep talking, keep telling the stories, get the message out, because even if somebody out there is hearing this and it helps them, then that's what I'm about. Now, in business, obviously, I'm also trying to build a body of work so that, like, when I'm pursuing plant medicines in terms of a position of credibility, I have a base of content now that I'm developing where you can listen to what I'm saying and get an insight into who I am as a person, where I'm coming from. So it has a value there. So
And
that's why I'm doing it.
there's something about watching your content where it's like it's real because you're not in my generation of these content creators. You're talking from a
Yeah,
place of just like, hey,
I'm
this is what I
old.
experienced. Exactly. You're old. Exactly. Sure. You don't, it's cut and dry. It's, hey, this is my story and listen to it because you're not pandering to the clicks. You're not pandering. You want people to come and hear, and that's what we need more of. It's not about like, hey, come watch this and then watch 3 more parts of it. No, just give me the information I need in 5 minutes if you have it, or 15 or 20.
you know and some of my long form may be too long because I'm delving into the stories. I'm looking, like, I don't have a big data set, but my audience seems to be male dominated, and an age demographic that's 35 plus, 35, even 45, which obviously makes sense. I'm in my early 50s, and so yeah, that makes sense. Who's going to listen to me? But I think I can reach through. If hopefully the algorithms will start pushing that out. I can talk to young people. I deal with young people when I do journeys, because you'll see, if you go do an ayahuasca journey, you're gonna be in there with a cross section of people that are like young in their 20s into their 70s. Like, it
Hmm.
runs the gamut. So it's an interesting observation.
And why? But like that's another topic to get into for a very long time. But like that 50
Yeah.
years that you lost in between, those people are just different. People are different because my
Yeah.
generation embraces this stuff and an older generation embraces this stuff. But then there's few and far between that were okay with trying this stuff, and then they tried to put this guilt on this stuff. Was it because
Yeah.
of TVs and commercials? Probably, and pharmaceutical ads, and everyone telling them about the food pyramid and eating cereal every day? Yeah.
Let me weigh in here too with a point, which is, um, for people that think that they might be open to it, but that they have this guilt or feel that their religion may be an impediment to moving forward with pursuing the psychedelic process. Let me say this, and my partner in this process, William Henry. So the platform that my content, the Meru Sky, is mine alone. You see, it's my individual journey.
Hmm.
But the name for the channel, by the way, came from my partner, who is William Henry, who's one of the main contributors to Ancient Aliens, to the show on the
And
History Channel.
you've been working with him to create Skywalker Cafe, and you
Right,
help
and
curate
the
that.
Skywalker Cafe really was William's. The cafe and the naming of that really came from William. This was his. That was his motivation, and so being on the show on Ancient Aliens, where we talk about the pyramids and ancient civilizations and where do we come from and who are we, the show really stops, although it has touched on it over the years. They're into, and they're still filming, like, into their 16th season, I think.
Oh wow.
They don't really focus on psychedelics, although it has been a component. It has peeked its head in, like, from time to time. But where we want to then take over is consciousness exploration, and where our origins and where do we come from in the alien phenomena. How does that interplay with psychedelics?
And
But also with religion. And William is the religious expert. And so he just did like a live event. If people are interested in the cafe, he just talked about the Ark of the Covenant, and then the blood and the wine and the Last Supper and Jesus, and theorizing with some very interesting, very educated theories on psychedelics, and whether the bread and the wine were actually entheogens and psychedelic elixirs, being part and parcel, embedded deeply into the Judeo-Christian belief systems.
And
So if
wow.
people are thinking, well, this might be an impediment, like I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Jew, because like rabbis are now talking about this, not very, widely, but there are some. No, maybe these things were actually core into our religious observance.
And
So I don't want to, I'm not the religious expert, but I'm saying if you're interested in this, please talk to your clergyman, please do your own research, and maybe you will come to the conclusion, come to the Star Walker Cafe if you're inclined, because you will have firsthand account being able to talk to like people that are expert like William about, hey, is this part of my Christianity? Can you help me maybe investigate this? Because maybe this actually is for me. And I had all this guilt and thought that like my pastor or my priest or someone would never be in approval of this. Maybe you're wrong, because maybe this is actually part of being the Christian that you weren't going to be. Now, I'm not saying, again, this is for everyone. I'm just saying if you are closed off to even considering it, open the door and at least maybe consider it.
and that's all you can do. And this whole space thing and this ancestral, like, I feel like there's an ancestral belonging to land. And like, if you're an Italian who has Italian roots, you should go to Italy every once in a while. It feels good to
Yeah.
be there. And if you're
Yeah. Oh,
Irish,
yeah.
you should go to Ireland. But this is another rabbit hole
Yeah.
for another time. And I would love to talk
Yes.
more about it with you at
Yeah.
a different time, maybe with
Yeah.
Mr. Henry again. But I really appreciate
Yeah.
you joining me on this journey. This is my first episode, and this was
Great.
the dog barking and a lot going on, but hey, it's called Inexperienced for a reason. And I just
That's all good.
I hope to get better from here. But thank you for being my first. You never forget. I guess you never forget your
Um,
first.
I'm happy. I'm pleased to do that, and I'm happy that you've had me.
And
And I think we've connected for a reason. I believe in this,
100%. And I would like
divine
to stay
connection.
connected for sure. And down the line we could talk more about this stuff. And if anyone wants to look for you, they can find you at Miro Sky on YouTube, the Miro Sky, and of course with
Yeah.
your work with Skywalker Cafe, the partnership that they have with your company at Sabanic. Am I saying
Yeah.
that correctly?
Yeah. There's no way to say it. Yes. Sabanic is cannabis in reverse.
Fantastic. I didn't even realize that. I wrote this one 6 times around my computer, and I didn't
It's
even
a it's
realize
a
it was
public.
cannabis.
I did not name the company. It's an OTC public company. We trade as SNNC. That's our ticker
Hmm.
symbol. So we're going to be doing a lot of this thing. We've integrated the Skywalker Cafe, and we're going to be making some announcements that I can't talk about yet publicly. But you'll be seeing that if you're interested to follow that, because we're on this journey, and there are going to be some people we're working with that are very well known actually. So
And
it should be interesting to follow.
I'm excited to see where you go as you continue your journey, and hopefully, I have a really good feeling that our paths are going to cross once again.
I hope so. I hope so.
Well,
Thanks for
David,
having
this
me.
was a real pleasure. Thank you for doing it. Kevin is
Great.
thank you for filling in as my guest producer today. You really just an audience for us, but thanks for coming in today, Kevin. And
Right.
thank you everyone else for joining us.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate this.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye bye.